Mori ore te whānau, no mai, hoki mai, and welcome on back or welcome on into the 99Dreams podcast. If you're a regular listener, then you already know it's Raori, the host of the show. Like always, we have some amazing guests lined up, and today is no different. Today we've got Tane Whitehead, another whanaunga from the Taranaki maunga. I know it's consistent on the show that we bring in some whanaunga from Taranaki, but hey, it's what we do, man. It's what we do. So welcome on to the show, brother. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good. Everything's going good. Everything's starting to ramp up again, which is, exciting times ahead, but also, as I talked to you previous, a bit of a struggle getting through this report.
Brotherhood, don't worry, man. I've been there too. It is a mesh, man. it sucks, but it's so much growth and learning at the same time, eh?
And that's what I've taken away from it, like as much as it's been a struggle, as everyone says, it's you got to go through those challenges sometimes because otherwise you just think it's going to come to you. And that's why I'm, taking a lot away from it, which when I look back, I know that I will take more than I am at the moment.
Yeah, bro, trust me. Even if it's the smallest thing, I think the littlest thing I took out of it was how to structure a paragraph more concisely so that my information flows from section to section. But stuff like that, man, that's real important when you're getting on into your honours, your masters, and your PhDs and stuff like that, bro. It's hectic, man. But before we get any further, do you just want to give the whānau a bit of a kōwai nōwai, who you are and where you're from?
Cool. Kia ora koutou, ko Tane Whitehead tōku ingoa no Taranaki ahau, kei o te poti tōku kāinga I Naianei. So, yeah, grew up in Spotswood in Taranaki, went to Spotswood Primary, Devon Intermediate, and then Spotswood College, and then decided to make the massive journey down to the University of Otago, which, looking back, it wasn't always, I didn't always think it was possible, but I think, I'm glad I came here and didn't go anywhere else.
Brotherhood, like, I'm the same. I went a little bit of a different route. I went down and did a study at NZAS in Wellington, but after going to Otago, man, it's a vibe. It's a vibe. I loved it. It was definitely something that I am glad I did not do. I'm so glad I went, if that makes sense. For you, did you have any other clear-cut options? Because, Taranaki is up here in the North Island, and it's a bit of a mish to get down to Otago, and an even bigger mish to get back home.
Yeah.
So was it always like, yeah, I'm keen as to come to Otago, or were you looking at other options?
I think, funnily enough, once I got to high school, my PE teacher said to me, you'd do great at being a physio. And I, at the time, I didn't really know what a physio done or what physio meant, but that was always the dream. And so physio is only offered down in Otago or AUT. So I was like, oh, weigh up the two options. But I've never really been a fan of Auckland, coming from a smaller city like Taranaki, like it's going somewhere big like that is a bit too much for me. But thankfully enough, and as I was going into year 13, my physics teacher pushed me to come down to hands-on at Otago, which is like a week-long program that year 12 and 13 students, they get to come see the uni, get a taster, and that really set me up for coming down to the university. That was my first ever time on a plane. So coming down, I was like, I don't know what's happening. Do I have to get my bag off the plane at Auckland and then put it on the next plane to Dunedin, or do I just let it go? And then got here and I couldn't find my bag. I was struggling, but it got to the end of the week, and I think the biggest takeaway was, understanding that people had come from all over the country, but they had the same worries and concerns about me, but also the same passions. And so it made me rethink, because, like the biggest advice I give to students coming through now is, you don't know what you don't know, but also, when you're in your high school, you've got close mates. And so you don't talk about that kind of stuff, right? You don't say that, oh, I'm struggling with my applications and stuff like that. So being able to be like, oh, there actually are people struggling, it makes you feel, like you can do this.
Hard out, bro. It's a steep learning curve. Like, there's no how-to manual on how to, set up your papers, how to get sorted, how to get yourself to your right hall of residence or your right flat. It's real nerve-wracking, man. I don't know how many hours I spent to ask Otago just, oh, can you please just walk me through this? I'm not too sure. So what was it like, your first experience at hands-on?
Oh, it was, I look back and it's probably one of the, it set me up for coming down here, but it wasn't without its challenges. I was fortunate enough to stay at Studham College, and I've had a full circle moment since then. But when staying there, I think it really allowed me to see, meet all these new people, but it wasn't too much. I think if I was across the road at Arana College as a student, I just wouldn't have pushed myself to get out of my comfort zone. And I'm fortunate enough for that. The first few people that I met were quite outgoing, and so then they would, introduce me to new people as the week went on. But I think also doing physiology, which was my main project for the week, I met some really cool people, and they were all inviting, and I guess it was also cool to see that there were other people who were more shy than me. And I was like, oh, so then, it makes you realize that it doesn't matter. You just got to get out there. And as much as, you can sit back and not do things. But I thought, because the opportunity is only for a week, and, I got a scholarship to come down to do that. So I might as well, push myself out of my comfort zone.
Hard out, bro. Hard out. Because, dude, like you said, you got a scholarship, so you might as well. And who knows, it might be the last time you're down there. It might not be.
Yeah. And that was the thing is, I think that was the other good thing about the program is they're not, obviously they promote the university, but it's also like just doing this shows that, no matter what university you want to go to, you've already got that mindset that, you're giving up a week in your summer holiday to come down here and experience what university has to offer. And I guess it made me realize that it actually was an option. I was always, I had all right grades, and, I'd done quite well academically, but it's one thing to do that in a smaller school like Spotswood College, but to then go, oh, it actually is a possibility to go to somewhere like university where you think it's the smartest of the smartest, right? So looking back, it made me realize, oh, okay, this is actually an avenue that I can pursue rather than just being, a dream that I didn't know if I could actually make it a reality.
Yo, that's mean too, because, yeah, it is hard if you're not, like, in the upper echelon of Boys High or Francis Douglas or Girls High or Sacred Heart here in Taranaki.
Yeah.
The Waitara High, Inglewood, Stratford, Harwater High, Spotswood, those kind of schools aren't always classed as, the most academic or the ones where the smartest kids go. But I don't always think that it comes down to how smart you are. I think, especially once you get to university, it's about how hard you can apply yourself and work through those situations.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I think is, that was something I learned in year 13, and it's taken me a while to get used to it. But I guess, I look back and I'm like, yes, I might not get the top grades, like an A+ or an excellence in everything for high school. But I was like, I'm playing sport, I'm playing representative sport, I'm, volunteering, I'm working part-time. So I'm willing to sacrifice, not being the best at one particular thing, which most of us, it's usually academics, which is pushed, right? But being like, okay, I can be a well-rounded. And I think that's what you need as you come to university. And I think that's what they want, is someone who, because as much as I hate to say it, when you come down to university, there's always going to be a point for people where they struggle and they're like, oh, this sucks, I hate it. But if you have those other things like sport, like music, part-time job, whatever it is, if you have that to fall on, then you can go, okay, sweet, I can focus on this for a bit, and then the grades will bounce back, But if your only focus is academics, then you're never going to, as soon as that drops, you have this identity crisis of, oh, what do I do now?
Hard out, bro. And a lot of people have talked about, those moments where they lose that thing that, made them, whether it was academics, whether it's powerlifting, whether it's gymnastics. It's once their essence of who they were is taken away, then they get in a real bad rut, and it's so hard to come out of. But like you say, if you have those other things that you can still be a part of, that takes your focus away from that, then eventually you do bounce back, and it's not all bad. What would you say was the biggest sort of learning curve you took coming from Taranaki down to Dunedin in your first year?
I guess, if I think about the values that I learned from Taranaki, I guess the biggest value that has helped me down here is just how tight-knit Taranaki is as a community, and how you can implement that down there in terms of making friends and stuff like that. Because I think, because Taranaki is so spread out, sometimes you feel like, like it is a big region, but it isn't overwhelming because we're all spread out. But all those major events, you still see the community come together as one, whether it's a rugby game, the Festival of Lights, whatever it is, everything's celebrated in Taranaki. And I think that's the other thing that I really, kept as I came down here, because I think once you come to university, there's almost this, social norm where you don't necessarily celebrate everyone's successes. You're always like, oh, how can I be better than this person? How can I be better than that person? Because you think, oh, if I'm better than this person, then that's going to lead me to a job, or that's going to lead me to another opportunity. But, Taranaki, it's everyone celebrates everything. It's not a matter of, because everyone has a different level of success. And I think that's something that I brought down here and was like, okay, this is, you should be celebrating that. And I understand there's different, growing up, different values that people have. And I think I was very fortunate that, being from Taranaki, being so supported, I was able to have that freedom, because that's not the case for everyone.
Oh, hard out, bro. And like you say, up here, it is like community hard up here. There's so many different events that everyone attends, and you might not know everyone in Taranaki, but as soon as you say that you're from Taranaki and you're in a different region, you're like, oh, whereabouts? And you just make all those small connections, which I think is so special. And I love that you touched on how so often everyone's so quick to tear another person down to propel themselves to success, rather than celebrate the bro, celebrate the sis as they succeed. Just because it's a rainy day for you doesn't mean that you should rain on everyone else's parades. That's why I think people these days get a little bit too toxic, and we should embrace one another and uplift and thrive on each other's success. There's plenty of room at the table for everyone to eat. We shouldn't be trying to fight over the same piece of pie, eh?
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, I think there's a difference between being inspired by one another to making it a challenge. Like, obviously there's going to be people that are competitive, and there's, of course everyone always wants to do better, but you're not doing yourself any good if you're not, rewarding other people for their successes, because then you've chased too hard on the, oh, when am I going to get my accolades? When am I going to get my appreciation? And nothing's ever going to satisfy that want. As much as you try, it just never will.
100% agree, man. And I think the first time I actually, as corny as it sounds, is the first time I actually learned and truly appreciated that was Love Yours by J. Cole. When I listened to the lyrics in that, like, that's when I finally put it together and was like, yeah, I got to stop trying to be like, I want this because, Tane's got a PlayStation 5. I need a PlayStation 5. Tane's doing honors. I got to do honors. It is fun and healthy to have competition, but it's never healthy to have in your head someone else's success as your milestone, because like you said, you will never reach that as hard as you try, because that will always shift to someone else. If, okay, cool, I got what Tane's got now. I don't know, Benja has got this, I need to achieve this. And then Tarina's got this, I need to achieve this. Or Jerry's got this, and I got to achieve that. It's a never-ending cycle, and it's just toxic, eh?
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's only going to burn more bridges than it is, create relationships and foster connections. Because, I've had times where I'm like, oh, like, this is good, and you chase all those things, but you realize if you're going to chase all these things, you're not going to have time to keep those connections, and and that's unfortunate. So you want to try and find that healthy balance where you're right, you're still challenging yourself to be a better person, but also finding time to foster those relationships, because those relationships are only going to last if you put something into it.
Hard out, man. And relationships are hard enough to maintain as it is. Like, once you leave university and your friend group disperses, now you're sort of left with, oh man, I've got to message the bro, or the bro's got to message me, and we've got to try and catch up. So if you're constantly shitting on those people, then your friend group, or your circle that you were once close with, now has become a lonely island, and you're eating dinner alone.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the next chapter for me, and that's been my contemplation over summer, is finishing my degree, and then for me going into postgrad studies, where a lot of them are either going into the workforce or just taking a break or traveling. It's like, oh well, now I've got to try and maintain those connections, which doesn't necessarily have to be a hard thing, and it doesn't have to be something I do all the time, but it's, again, readjusting to that idea, similar to when you leave high school and you're like, oh, I'm leaving all my high school mates, and some of them are staying home, some of them are going to other unis or wit or politic or whatever it might be. So, but I think, at the end of the day, it comes down to, it's going to be a reciprocal relationship, right? And you're going to figure out who, as hard as it is, there's people who you'll have the best connection in person, but once they leave, it just dwindles. And that's not to say that that friendship still isn't there. It just means that, like, you just don't have that relationship, if it's distant, and that's absolutely fine. And there's other people that you didn't realize, you had such a strong connection until they leave, and then they're messaging all the time, and you realize that relationship's quite strong. So it's going to be an interesting, year to see that readjustment for sure.
Yeah, bro, and you'll soon learn, the people that are really worth your time moving forward, and not to say that there are, just throw away all the former friendships and relationships that you formed that aren't as tight anymore. It's just sometimes what I've learned from that situation is that not everyone's into social media catch-ups. They prefer face-to-face catch-ups, and that energy when you do catch up again will be exactly how it was when you left. But yeah, it's how do you maintain that in that space of limbo when you're out there still achieving your things and they're achieving their things? How do you still maintain those relationships? It's a tricky place to be sometimes, because you're constantly in a frame of, oh, have I upset them, or have I not reached out in too long of a time that is that friendship no longer there? But one thing I've learned, bro, is that if you're a good enough person, people will always, have time of day, no matter how long it's been. They'll always have time of day for anyone.
Yeah, and I think that's what I found, especially my first year, there were a couple of close mates that stayed back home, and I was like, oh, is this connection going to last? But, and we still send snaps and stuff like that, but, it's pretty superficial. Nothing, you don't get into those deep conversations. But then I go home and, we catch up and spend 2-3 hours just talking about the last 6 months and what's happened and, what's happening. And it's like I haven't left. And that's the cool thing to see, but also to learn, that you don't have to have those conversations all the time, but it's also, as you say, finding that right balance between, and not being too pushy where you're like, it feels like you need the connection more than actually just, having that connection, but also, doing it enough that the person feels like you still care about the connection. So definitely a hard balance to find.
Yeah, man. Hey, when you figure it out, let me know, because I'm still working on it, man. Hey, but shout out to all our friends, no matter where you guys are in the world. We're still here. Hit us up. Hey, man. So one thing I've noticed about you is that you are quite an intense worker. I'll call it intense, man, because when I was there, you were involved in so many different kaupapa, while still maintaining quite a high level academic grade throughout some of your papers, or the one I marked in particular. How did you maintain all of that? And little the listeners know as well what all the things you're involved in, because, bro, it was a lot.
Yeah, I guess from first year, I kind of learnt that, like, as much as it is daunting to, step into this new environment and stuff like that, I think one thing I've learned is, people are always willing to say yes, for you to take up these opportunities. And if they aren't wanting you to take it up or can't help you themselves, then they'll be like, oh, I can't help you, but there's this person you could go see, or you could go do this. And so I've always been willing to take up those opportunities. And so in first year, it just started with like volunteering and stuff like that. And then second year it increased. I looked to start the hands-on scholarship for Taranaki, which we can talk on later if you want. I joined the exec for SPEC, so Sport and Exercise Science, which again was allowing me to get that leadership role in some aspect within the uni. I started a podcast, so Baskets of Knowledge, which I never thought I would start a podcast. I never thought that would be a realm I would go down, but here I am. I think we've done 65 episodes or something, and it will continue to grow and continue to go. So that's just been another, thing. But I think, with volunteering, I've now been a subordinate at Studham College and president of the exec, done a range of volunteering, while also, playing sports. I played rugby in first year, and then second year I didn't pursue it because I was doing too many things, and I thought it was finally a time for me to, reset and find my passion again for rugby. I'd played all the way from year 5, year 6, all the way through intermediate high school. And so when I came down first year, it was a huge shock in terms of the culture of rugby down here, how prominent they are and how strong it is down here. And so it was just a way for me to rekindle that relationship. And last year I managed to get back into senior rugby, and then I started playing rugby league as well, which is probably where my passion lies the most. I played growing up until under 17s, but in Taranaki there's no Colts that then leads into Prems. It's just straight into the Prem grade. And only being 17 at the time, I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. And especially for the positions I play, I was just like, nah, I could still play rugby. So that was my focus. But I guess if I lead back to the balance question, it's not always easy. And I guess, there's definitely been times where people have been like, oh, you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't, you should take a step back. And I think as hard as it sounds and as cliche as it sounds, when people say that, I'm usually like, oh, no, I can do it. And so I'll try and prove them wrong and do it, but it's trying to find that healthy medium. And there's definitely been times where I've either lacked the motivation or got to the point where, kind of like the movie Yes Man, Jim Carrey says yes to everything. And it gets to the point where, he doesn't know why he's saying yes anymore. And I guess I did get to that point as well where, I was doing volunteering, but I was like, why am I actually here? Is it because I enjoy it, or is it because I just think it's the right thing to do and the right thing to be doing with my time? And so, as I move into this year as well, yes, I'm taking on more responsibilities, but I'm being more proactive in terms of what I'm choosing to do, and doing things that I'm really passionate about, because, I had a lot of learnings last year. And I think one of them was learning that you saying no isn't, you don't have to see it as a disappointment for you, because you're actually opening a door for somebody else to take up that opportunity or take up that role. And that might be their first opportunity, So, as much as we dwell on, oh, I wish I could do more, being able to see it as a positive for somebody else and being like, nah, this person's going to do an amazing job in that role. And, you can always reassess as well, as the other thing, if you want to take up more roles and stuff like that. But my challenge always to everyone is just to take up those opportunities, because you don't, if you're always going to put that barrier of, oh, no, I won't be able to do it, then the answer is always going to be no. But if you push yourself, or, all it takes is sending an email, sending a message to someone and being like, hey, am I able to do this? 9 times out of 10, the person's going to say yes. But people don't see it that way, People just see it as, oh, there's people out there that are better than me that can do better things. And so, yeah, it's really been, it's been challenging, but it's been a really enjoyable time to be able to do all these things.
Bro, hard out. I love what you said there too about, saying no is not sort of letting anyone down, especially yourself, but creates an opportunity for someone else. I love that sentiment, because I used to think like that too. It's just like, oh man, if I say no, then who else is going to do it? So I might as well have to just be me. When in reality, yeah, it's an opportunity for someone else to either step up or have an opportunity for someone else to succeed in that role, man. I love that. That's so good.
Yeah, and yeah, like it's been a big, few years in terms of taking up all these roles and stuff like that. But I think, my question is always, why not? What else would I be doing that's more productive? And like, my days are full, but nighttime I'm not really doing anything outside of sports. And I think it's about finding something that makes you happy and something you enjoy. And for me, that's always doing things. If I get a day off where I have nothing to do, I kind of just sit there and go, oh, like, what do I do? What am I, why am I wasting this time? And yes, there's times for me where I just need to chill a bit and, do whatever, watch a movie, whatever it might be. But most of the time I just like to go, and that's the person I am. But for other people, they just choose those few roles that they really want and they thrive in that. So again, it comes down to personal preference.
I 100% agree with you there. Some people can thrive doing a million things at once, and others find it a little bit overwhelming, but they excel at the few things that they really do. So like you say, whatever sort of spectrum you're in, go hard at it, and just as long as you enjoy it, that's the main thing.
And I think that's the message that's often missed, like even as so second year I took up lab demonstrating and tutoring as well. And, so it was a big jump for me, but the students would ask me certain questions, or, they'd be like, oh, how do you do all this? But I think that's also been the positive thing for me, is being able to show people that it is possible to do all these things, because I think, without those people, you have nothing to guide you, and that doesn't mean that I have to talk to every single one, every single person and be like, this is what is possible. But it's more just being that person that they go, oh, it is possible to do these things at this age, or, to push those boundaries that you think are there, because most of the time they're not, and there will always be someone that backs you up. And, that, it might be the people you least expect, but, if you're not pushing yourself out there, you're never going to truly know.
Hard. Like I say, just why not? Why not get out there and give it a try? If it's not for you, it's not for you. At least you learn. Why not?
For sure. And that was the other thing is, being in the volunteering space was awesome. But then I'd have people coming to me and being like, oh, I've been told I should, come do or I should go do volunteering because it would be good on my CV. And I should, take up placement or coach a primary school or do this or do that, because it's not enough to just have my degree. And I think it's getting to the point where you're putting too much pressure on these young people to achieve these things, like, yes, it's great if you have all that extra stuff, but take it all away. And we'd rather, see people that are just enjoying what they're doing, not just doing it for the sake of doing it, because that was something that I really reflected on and still reflect on as I go into my honours year, like, as you say, with me having, pretty good grades, I could do honours and, pass it and do fine, but that's not what I want out of honours. I want to do study that actually means something to not only me, but the people that I'm doing the study for, doing the research for. And that's something that people often miss, and because this pressure is on us as young people to, have our life sorted and, oh, what career are you going to get out of that? Where's your 5-year, 10-year plan? Who cares about that? Focus on 1 year and just come down here and enjoy it, because it's not going to last forever. So you might as well do it. And, even for the parents who, put the pressure on the child, and the kids come down here and they're like, oh, I wish I want to do something else, but this is what my parents want. Your parents are happy when you're happy. And even if they can't see it immediately, they will see it down the track when they realize, oh, this is what they're really passionate about.
100%, bro. Like you said, too often is there so much pressure on young people to be a certain way, to be married by 25, have kids by 28, have their own house by 30. Even in this housing market, nothing like that is possible. But, all these unrealistic expectations, when in reality, if you want to travel, go travel. If you want to study, go study, because these years are the most fun you'll ever have, because you're not locked into a contract, you're not locked into a mortgage, you're not locked into all these payments. All you're doing is just trying to live your life and get ahead before you get locked into all that stuff. And like, my uni days were the best days. Me and all my friends, we still reminisce on it. A lot of the guests that come on this podcast still reminisce on it. And there's not one moment we were like, man, I wish I did that community work instead of going to play golf with you guys. Or man, I really gutted I didn't come to that party that time and stayed home and, I don't know, baked cookies, just
and that's,
take the opportunities.
And that's the message I try to portray as well. I say to people, especially first years coming in, I'm like, in 10 years, is it going to be, oh, I wish I got an A+ instead of a B+? Or is it going to be you reflecting on the memories that you had? It's the same concept as if we look back on intermediate or the start of high school. We strived so hard to try and get a merit or an excellence or just pass those papers. But I look back on that and I'm like, it really didn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, I am where I am, and that's all that matters. But I think too often it's, oh, you need to do better. But there has to be a point to which you're happy with, what you are achieving.
Hard. And like, what is better? Is better, academically great, but your whole water is terrible.
Mm.
Like for me, the three things that I need to achieve is happiness, health, and here, being here, alive in the presence.
Mm.
So that's what I always tell people is just, as long as you're happy, you're here, and you're healthy, then nothing else matters, man.
And that's the thing, you think in the short term that it's going to be good, but always in the long term, you always see that something's fallen off that is within your, usual routine. For me, I know something's wrong if if I'm not playing sports or at least being active most days because that's what I enjoy, or if I haven't called my mum in a couple of weeks, because that's the connection that I always try and call her at least once a week, if not twice a week, to just check in. And we don't always have to talk long, but it's I know if I haven't talked to them in a few weeks that I'm stressing about something, and sometimes you don't know it's there, it happens, and then you're like, oh, why am I, there always needs to be some grounding point that you go, oh, this is what I need to get back to so I can reset.
Hard, bro, hard. And I'm the same, man. Just quick phone call home, everything's reset, and you're not ready to charge back at it again, but you kind of had a more clear mindset as to what you need to get done in order to get back to who you are when you operate. So let's touch on that the kaupapa that you did with the University for Taranaki.
Yeah, so if I reflect on how it started, I never really thought it was going to get to the point it is today. I started it thinking, so I came down to hands-on at Otago and I got a Potama scholarship, which is for Māori students to come down and see the University of Otago. And as I say, it was the whole reason I came down here. And, even if I didn't come down here, it taught me, that I could be outgoing, I could get to know more people, and I could do all these things. So it gave me much more than, just being able to come down. And so when I went into first year and after lockdown and everything like that, I thought, it's awesome that I got to come down on this opportunity, but there's people that don't fit the scholarship categories of Māori, Pacifica. There's a performing arts scholarship, like a disability scholarship, and I think there's one other category as well. But, I said, especially growing up in Taranaki, as you said, outside of Boys High, Girls High, Francis Douglas and Sacred Heart, a lot of the other schools are, mid to low decile. And I was like, these students are capable of doing so many things, and coming from one of those schools, we are capable of doing these things. But, I look back and I'm like, I wouldn't have paid the money to come down to the University of Otago, other side of the country, for something that I didn't even know if I was going to come to the university. So that was my whole idea behind it. And so I reached out to Pradesh, who is our liaison officer, and was like, what are the chances of making this happen? And he was like, cool, we'll just, let's figure it out. So we figured out what we needed, how much money we needed if we were going to sponsor a kid, how we would store the money, and so many things I've learned just by starting this scholarship, like simple things like, oh, where do we hold the money? Because, how do I go to businesses and be like, oh, you need to trust this money in a 18, 19-year-old, guy that you don't really know. It will be sweet. Don't worry about it. So that was a whole learning curve in itself. Figuring out, once you do get sponsors, to thank them, and how can you show that relationship in terms of, supporting, for all the things I've given you, what are simple ways that you can thank them, whether it's putting their logos on the certificate and all the advertising to show that they've sponsored it, and sending out a thank you card and stuff like that, and connecting when I go back home, all those kinds of things that I had to learn. And it did get to a point where I didn't think it was going to happen, because I say between 200 and 300 emails to different businesses, going, it was the same blurb, but you change it up for each business and you go, oh, this is what it is. But especially because it's something new, it's, how do you ask that connection? But again, going back to those connections, the first sponsor that jumped on board, I went to school with her younger son. And so, I knew of him. We weren't, we played volleyball together. We weren't really too close, but because she had that knowledge and knew that it was a good cause, she jumped on, and that was the beginning. That was like awesome. All right, now we've got the money. She's willing to pay to sponsor one kid to come down, and that was such a breakthrough in itself. To go, oh, we're going to see one kid come down here, and if nothing more comes of it, that's awesome, because that's one more kid that probably wouldn't have had that opportunity otherwise. And so from there, it was sorting out all the logistics of what are we going to ask in the application, and how are we going to choose the student that comes down, all these other things. But we eventually figured it out, and now we pretty much have a pretty streamlined process. We need to get a bit of feedback on a few small things, but we think it's pretty good. And so last year, 2 years ago, we awarded the first scholarship to Jamie White from Spotswood College. And so that was awesome. I was real lucky that the timing worked out, and me and Prajesh were both in Taranaki start of November, so we could actually award the scholarship in person. And that was such an amazing feeling, and the emotions that he was going through, and his mum, and it was just, it showed all the hard work of sending the emails, figuring out all the stuff. All of it was worth it to just see him have this opportunity, which otherwise would never have been possible. And so unfortunately he couldn't come down, because during that January period it was going between orange level and red level. And so it was like, if we have 400 kids down here from all across the country and we go into red, what are we going to do? And, a few weeks before uni starts, how would we do it all? So it ended up getting like an online version. So unfortunately it didn't come down, but we still, awarded the scholarship so he could put it in applications and stuff. And we still reached out to make those connections and stuff like that. So that was all meaningful. We got more sponsors, and then in August last year, we done the same process of going through the scholarships, all that kind of stuff. And then again chose our award winner, Kamia, who's from Rangatahi. And so Prajesh was able to go in and, award the scholarship to her. Unfortunately, due to exams and then finishing like my subwarden duties, I couldn't go back up home myself. But, it was, I could still, I jumped on video call and talked to her briefly and stuff like that. And so at the hands-on, just been, because I've been helping out since I done it as a high school student, I was able to see her come down and see her make the most of the opportunities and stuff like that. And it's just priceless, to think how much it means to her, and how much she's taking away from the week. So it's been something I'm really passionate about. And with that finishing, I said the next goal is to expand it to different regions and, see how we can expand it, because there's no reason why we can't now take it to, other regions that struggle to get students, and, those rural areas, those, low decile schools, just invite them in and see where it goes. And so, yeah, it's been a journey. It's definitely been one of those things where, there was no one else, it's not like studying for uni or sport or anything like that. I couldn't just turn to a mate and go, oh, how are you going with starting that scholarship? Because it's not something that everyone does. But, hopefully I've laid that foundation now where people can see that it is possible, because, even just a scholarship in itself, I think of, it's always older alumni, predominantly, white and, well off, so they can sponsor the scholarship themselves. So I think that's the other meaningful part, is it's not about me. It's not about me giving back and getting, the accolades. It's about, it's a community thing. And that, goes back to what we talked about at the start about Taranaki being a community. And that's what I want to bring out is, scholarships are good, whatever format they come from, but to have a community scholarship where you have, local businesses supporting local students to go and see those aspirations without any pressure of, if you get the scholarship, you have to, do this, or you have to do a certain project, or you have to go to the uni, you have to be wanting to go to the University of Otago. Who cares about that stuff? Just give these kids an opportunity to show them that it's possible,
I rate that so much, man. It's so amazing the things that you're doing, because a lot of those kids, like you say, at Spotswood, Waitara, and the rest of our schools here in Taranaki, a lot of us don't get the opportunity to explore outside of the region, and we don't get stuck here. But we kind of see that this is the only place to go, so we'll just stay here. So having that opportunity where you're, removing a barrier for some of these students to go down there, check it out, and get a week of experience, get to, be stress free, live a happy enjoyment of a university experience without the pressure of, oh my god, I'm at uni, this is first day, where's my lecture, where do I got to go for this? It's like a fun environment. We get to hang out, meet new people, get out of your skin, and I love that you've got the community involved, bro. Love that you've got the community involved, and so there's still room to expand within the community. People can donate a bit more, or more businesses.
Yeah,
can
we're
involved.
definitely still looking to reach out to sponsors, and I think that's something we've talked on now. Is how do we connect all our sponsors in, because we originally we set it up for the scholarship for the year, and then it was like, okay, now that we've at least we know we're sponsoring one kid, how do we try and create an endowment so that it will carry over in the future, so we don't have to every year constantly reach out and be like, oh, we need more sponsors, but create that connection. And so the thing now is about maintaining that momentum that it's got. And we've just reached out to Kamia to get some with questions to see what her experience was. And I think that's the other thing is reflecting on how the scholarships helped, but also talking about some of the challenges she faced when she came down, because I think that brings realness to the actual situation. Because you look at all these programs and things that universities run, or tertiary providers, they run all these amazing things and they promote all the good, and that's awesome. But it's also bringing that realness of, hey, there are going to be things that everyone struggles with. They're all going to be different, but there is going to be something, whether it is meeting lots of people because it's a huge environment, or a culture shock for some people in terms of coming down and meeting people from all different walks of life. So just small things like that, and making it a reality that this is actually going to happen too, not to scare people away, but to just be open and honest about these kinds of things.
Because when you first get to university, it's a whole new world, especially Otago. It's a whole new world down there, man. Considering coming up here in Taranaki, we don't get a lot of what they got going on down there, but it's so different. And like you say, having the good is always great, but you always know that it's going to be there. Whereas if you can understand the challenges, and those are the things that you guys can look at, how can we improve this? How can we make that experience better? So this can only get better as time goes on. Like you said, you've only had it going around for the past 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah. Yep.
So, bro, it can only get bigger and better. And as you expand, not just within Taranaki, but out to other regions, bro, it's going to be on to see. I can't wait to see it blow up in future.
Yeah, so, I hope so. I think that's always been the challenge for me is, where do you stop? And that's not to say that, it's a bad thing that we keep expanding, but you want to do it enough so that you don't lose sight of what your initial goal was, which was to create these opportunities. Because I know as I expand to the regions or get to know more students and stuff like that, it's how do you, where do the barriers lie, and where do you, keep it within? Because I've also, had ideas of, what if it wasn't just a scholarship for this, because there's all these other universities. How do you, there's no scholarships at the moment that I know of that are open scholarships that you go, okay, tell us something you've applied for, what is your purpose behind applying for that? And, if we think that your kaupapa is strong and that we'll give you the money to sponsor you for that. There's nothing specific like that. And I think that's, again, it's just dropping that barrier. And I think, it's often money that we don't like to talk about, but it is the biggest barrier there.
Bro, money is the root of all evil, as they say. It is, not having it is bad, but having too much is also bad. So it's like, where the hell do you lie? Where's the middle? There's huge challenges for you guys to figure out in the coming years, but definitely excited for it. And I'll be keen to jump in once 99 Dreams takes off a bit more, bro. We'll come sponsor some money towards the kaupapa because, like I said, man, Taranaki's a community and we all got to help other people, you know, at least get an opportunity to experience some of the things that we've experienced. Because although a lot of the guests on this podcast have all been academics, it's still such a huge privilege to attend university and even more so to complete a degree, whether it be undergrad or postgrad studies. Just completing one is, you know, a huge accomplishment in itself, and we are in quite a privileged position ourselves. So anything to help out the rangatahi either achieve their dreams or realize that university is not for them.
For sure. And yeah, that's the thing, you know, it goes both ways. And I think that's the thing that I learnt, and that was probably another, you know, underlying factor of why I wanted to start something like this, was because, you know, coming from Spotswood College, the message was always, you know, being a lower decile school, once you're 16, it was like, if you don't want to be here, find a job and, you know, go work, don't stay here, don't, you know, waste our time, essentially was the message. And for me, I was like, you know, that's all good and well, but there's people out there that, you know, they don't go to university, but they probably could have. They probably could have done all these amazing things, but they just never got given the chance, you know? So I've gone back a few times back to school when, you know, the teachers have been like, oh, is it all right if you talk to the, you know, the whole senior school, not just, you know, like year 13 or, you know, a certain year level? And I'm like, no, that's cool. That's what I want, you know? Because I said, as much as I'm, you know, I'm getting better now at public speaking, but I was always scared and nervous and hated public speaking. But I think if I can get across to one kid, you know, then the whole, you know, going through all that is worth it. But at the same time, it's about, you know, why not bring all these kids in? You know, the kids that don't want to go to university or, you know, already have something else lined up in their life, they're not going to focus whether they have to come to the, you know, these presentations or not. But there's going to be, you know, maybe a handful of kids that you do that talk, and they were never thinking about university, but something that you said, and you don't know what it was, but something you said stuck with them and made them look into university. And again, whether that translates to them coming to university or whether it was just sparking that thought, at least you gave them the opportunity to make that decision for them instead of, you know, because I think about it, you know, even when I would hear, oh, this person's coming from another university, I wouldn't go because I was just like, I'm not interested in that university. But if I had gone to those, you know, talks, I probably would have at least looked into them a bit more, thought, oh, it actually offers a course that I'm interested in, or, you know, it could have sparked anything. And I think to take that away from students is doing a disservice to them. You know, at least give them the opportunity to sit there and, you know, maybe they will take something away from it.
Hard out, bro. 100%. And like teachers, I don't know if they still do it, but yeah, like you said, when you went to school and when I went to school, they 100% said, look, if you're only here to eat your lunch and piss around, then school ain't for you, go get a job or go do something else, you know, go to the meatworks, go work somewhere, go become a builder or something. Never would they ever think that, oh yeah, that kid's got something, you know, we'll bring him along, but he doesn't pay attention in my class. So because he doesn't, I'll berate him a little bit to try and discourage him from trying to pursue further research or further study, sorry. But it's those opportunities where students like yourself go into schools and they have that opportunity to speak. And I think that year 11 should be listening to those university speeches so that they can set their papers up in year 12 and 13 to direct them into the courses that they need to get into. Otherwise, I think year 13, as great as it is, I think it might just be a little bit too late because what if you're like, oh, I didn't want to do that, I wanted to do this, but my papers don't align.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, it's planting that seed early that, oh, this is a possibility. And you know, even in year 11, you don't have to figure it all out straight away, but it's just being open to those conversations and making it normal, you know, because that's the other thing is, you know, for me growing up, I'm the first in my immediate family to go to uni. And so, you know, it's not something you can just, you know, for me, I couldn't just go to my parents or, you know, my siblings and be like, oh, you know, what's it like? Oh, what do I have to do? It was something that I needed to grasp on early so I had time to adjust to this idea and make it a, you know, normal thing that was just, you know, the next step in the journey. And, you know, some people are fortunate and they've had, you know, their whole family's gone to university, and that's awesome. But it's also, you know, how do you bridge that gap between everyone so everyone has at least a starting, you know, starting foundation of, okay, this is what university has to offer for me, and not just something that's a blanket approach to everyone, but something that, you know, sticks with each individual.
Hard, bro. And I think, yeah, that's where you're filling in that gap in a way with going into the school, delivering a speech, or although you're growing into it, man, which is great, going from year 13s to now the senior school. But also that scholarship as well. It just adds those different layers to be able to just say, here you guys go. It's not impossible. And I know it's not for everyone, but it's not impossible. It's achievable. And even if people had to take a gap year, we've had lots of whānau come on this podcast so far that have said that they've taken a gap year and it's some of the best times of their life. Danny, the most recent, who said she took a gap year, she's studying dentistry now. So you don't have to go straight out of high school into university if you want to go into health science, med, dentistry, or anything like that. Whānau, you can take your time. It's not going anywhere.
And I think that's, you know, the other thing is it always comes back to connection. You know, I think especially in today's society, you know, we kind of push people through, oh, you know, this is the next thing you got to do, and then off to the next thing and off to the next thing. But creating those connections where it's not just about that one-off thing, but, you know, tracking further down, you know, like there's juniors from my school that I still keep in touch with, and I'm like, oh, you know, what are you up to now? And it doesn't take much energy for me to do that, but it means the world to them to be like, oh, you know, this person actually cares beyond the here and now. And I think as I've, you know, grown into my Māori identity, I reflect on that as, you know, the power of whanaungatanga and building those relationships. And that's, you know, something that I didn't know I held so strong to me, but it's something that always comes out as I reflect on things is, you know, because people will be like, oh, why do you keep those connections? Why do you, you know, carry it on after they've gone past that experience? But it's, as I say, you know, it's something that doesn't take much from me, but even just connecting with those younger students and going, oh, how's it going with your application process or scholarships and stuff like that? You know, I don't need all the nitty gritty details, but at least by reaching out, they're like, oh, I have someone I can talk to who understands that process. And that means a lot to a lot of people. I had a mentor when I'd done a leadership award, and, you know, that's something she said to me as well, was I think her dad worked in some space, but anyway, she was saying, you know, he says just how much it means if you know someone's name, you know, and it comes, you know, directly back to the ko wai no wai. If you know just something small about someone, you know, I'm working with primary school kids at the moment and after school care, and, you know, if I don't get to know who they are, it's pretty hard to get them all together and get them to listen to you. But if I know someone's name and I know something about them, they feel that connection immediately, and they're going to respect you more for it.
Bro, hard out, man. And there's no truer sentiment than just the smallest thing as remembering their name, saying, Kia ora Tane, how are you doing today? It just, they remembered me, or they know my name. That was one of the biggest things I learned from Specs 206, being involved in that paper, is as hard as it is to remember over 123 students, it's still so important just to remember the name. And if you have to pause a little bit and then be like, Tane, that's it. How's it going, brother? How are you? It just makes a difference, because they know that you're going, oh, okay, it's not Brian, it's not Daniel, it's not Bruce, it's Tane. There it is. There we go. Names are such a powerful thing, and it's such a weird sentiment that a name holds so much power, but it really does. Just that simple act of respect, eh?
And I think it comes from being in a world that's so full of information. You know, you get so much communication from different things and social media and this and that, you know, just having that name there signifies, oh, I'm more than just, you know, another person to them. I'm actually, you know, I actually have a name. I actually have a meaning. Yeah.
Hard out, bro. What would you say is, out of all of that experience up to now, been the most useful to you in terms of understanding your research kaupapa coming into your honours?
It's a good question. I think just having a purpose is the main thing, you know, like if I strip away everything else, you know, for me, it doesn't matter whether I get a publication out of it or whether I don't, you know, or whether I get good grades in it. All I want is to, you know, be confident in myself, that I'm, you know, confident in my capabilities, but also that I'm creating an environment that's important for the students, the people I'm working for, you know, so that it has more meaning than just another study that's happening for a particular reason. And I think, you know, through the summership that I'm doing at the moment, that's really solidified that, because although I always, you know, knew that, and as I was making a decision towards honours, I knew that I wanted a kaupapa that I related to and that I was passionate about. And that was quite tough, right? Because when I was narrowing down what I wanted to research going into honours, I was always drawn to physiology because I really respect Jim and the way that he connects with his students and goes out of his way to, you know, support his students. But as much as I wanted him to be my supervisor, I just couldn't find anything within physiology that I was truly passionate about. And that's what I said, you know. Yes, I'm disappointed that I can't work under him, but that doesn't mean that I can't go and talk to him throughout the year about my kaupapa. And, you know, I've found something that I'm passionate about, and I also have a good supervisor. So I'm very fortunate that I can go into that space. But I guess also, you know, going back to this whole idea that I like to challenge things, is that, you know, going into the research, I was like, I want to do something that means something to me, not something that, oh, a researcher, you know, this is the next step for them. Yes, it's easy in terms of, you know what your kaupapa is from the start, and you can go in without all these struggles of, oh, what am I actually doing? What do I actually want to get out of this? But, you know, at the end of the day, when I finish it all, I know I'll be proud that I've stepped into this space and challenged myself to do something that I actually want to do.
Bro, straight up, best answer you could ever give, man, because I was on the same thing. I was like, because I come into honours at the same time as Tash and Ashton, and they were under Jim, and they had their set kaupapa, so they knew what they were up to. And I was under AMJ, and my kaupapa was kind of shaky because I was like, oh, I want it to be about this, but I want it to be about this because this is what I'm really interested in, which was pūrākau and Māori mental health / identity. And so that's what I was kind of molding it around. And like you said, bro, by the end of it, I didn't really care that I didn't have the analytics that everyone else was producing. I didn't have the tables, the stats. What I had was a dissertation that I was proud of by the end of it. I got everything I wanted to be put into it. I got to have myself reflected in my research. I could see, you know, my whānau in this research. And so that was more important to me than the numbers, the stats, and having the glory of a quote-unquote science dissertation as opposed to a Māori dissertation.
Yeah.
When in actual fact, mātauranga Māori is a science, but it's not within the science category because mātauranga Māori is sort of all-encompassing. So, bro, what is your kaupapa, if you don't mind sharing with us?
Yeah, so I've still been narrowing it down because, you know, it's been such a huge jump. And again, it's been good because, you know, I look to go for data collection at the end of this week, which is a huge step, you know, like most people aren't even thinking about their honours, so enjoying their summer. But it's been something that I'll look back on and be happy that I've done it. But basically what we're going to look at is healthy active learning, which is a current government initiative in primary schools to increase physical activity. And what we want to see is whether this is, one, sustainable in terms of, you know, is it achieving the outcomes that we want to, but a specific focus on the outside school hours. So, you know, before school, after school, are kids actually increasing their physical activity in these areas as well? Because, you know, the research suggests that already inside school, there's an increase in physical activity because of these initiatives. But for me, it's about how does it translate outside of the school hours, you know, because, you know, I think growing up, because I was associated to a club and because I was confident in my abilities, you know, to go for a run or go to the gym, coming down to university and leaving that school space, I was confident to go and do physical activity by myself. But a lot of people, they need that comfort of school. And so once once school's removed, if you go into the workforce or you go to tertiary education, a lot of people drop off their physical activity because they don't have it structured for them and they don't know what they're doing. And that's not their fault. It's because we haven't taught them, how to do it outside of school. There's this contrast where at the moment we, on one end, we don't support kids growing up enough to, learn what physical activity means to them and find something that they're passionate about. But at the same time, we drown parents with so much information about, oh, we need to be doing this, and your kids shouldn't be on the screen for more than 2 hours, and they should be getting this much sleep, and they should be eating this, they should be doing this, and it's just overwhelming. We just need to keep it simple. Go out and just play outside with a rugby ball, with a netball, with a soccer ball, and that's enough. That's all it means. But it's about taking that first step to go outside, and so that's what I want to see is, is this actually worth the time in terms of, obviously we're getting results in school, and that's awesome, but outside these school hours is where the true value, I think, comes of being self-sufficient in your physical activity.
Bro, Harder, this is going to be a mean research. We'll have to get you back on at the end of the year once we see what your findings are. So you're going to link up with some of the local clubs down there to see what the enrollment stats are like in terms of after school kids going and playing sports and stuff like that?
So the main data collection is going to be down in Southland, down in Gore. So we've got 4 schools, and we'll do like interviews and surveys and stuff like that, which they've already looked at. But I'd love to look at those numbers too. And I think the other thing I want to do is do mixed methods, because I understand that there's limitations to if you just done quantitative or if you just done qualitative. But if I can combine those, then I can get a real understanding, hopefully, of where these hours are coming from outside of school, because that's the other thing. They could just be doing physical activity outside the school hours, but still, representing their school when, their first 15, their first 11, their, whatever it is. So trying to actually figure out, and that's going to be the hardest part is, again, back to the scholarship. Where do I stop myself in terms of, this is only a year project, but there's so many different avenues I want to look at in terms of, for example, these initiatives are usually taken up by lower decile schools because, the government's giving them funding, they're getting the support, and so why would you not take it up? But, is that benefiting these kids or is it not? And that's going to, it opens so many different questions. And, again, same with the summership. It's how do you draw all those ideas, bring it back in and try and get it into something in a year? So that's going to be the next challenge, and I'm sure it will be an entertaining one. Yeah.
Oh, bro, it's a journey, man. It's a journey, if I can say that. One piece of advice I will give you, bro, is don't try and rewrite the whole thing with only 2 weeks to go, because that puts you under a hell of a lot of stress. You do a couple of 40-hour days, brother. It's not worth it, man.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. But it sounds like an amazing co-papa to be a part of, bro. And like I said, if you're free and available at the end of the year, I'll definitely be keen to get you back on and see what the results were in your dissertation, man, because this is an awesome co-papa. It's definitely needed, especially in today's age where every kid is just stuck like this, looking at their tablets, their phones, computers. I've got a nephew, he's 4 turning 5, and he is glued to his tablet, man. He'll play with toys for a little bit, ride a bike for a little bit, but then afterwards he's glued back to his tablet. I don't know. I think it's just the way that this generation is now, because technology is so accessible.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is at the end of it, what is? I guess that's the other thing, is having a clear focus of what I want to get out of it at the end. Because you can go down those rabbit holes of you want to fix everything and you want to do everything, but it's only a year. So how do you draw that back in? And I guess that's the other question that's going to come up in it, right? Is, with technology being so prevalent for all these children, do they have to be doing the same recommended, physical activity that we've always suggested, or is it going to change? And that's something that, there's going to be more questions than answers, I think, by the end of it. But that's the beauty of research, I guess.
And that's why you always say at the end, This isn't final, and there's always room for more research to be
Yeah.
done in further years, which I will look into in my master's and my PhD.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bro, we have this segment here on the show where we get people to share a dream with us, and we throw it into this dream deposit box. And it says on the box there, it's always remember when they doubted you. It's from a Trey Young sneaker from Adidas. I love the sentiment because, you know, so many times in life we have someone somewhere that doubts us and says that we can't do something, and we prove them wrong. So I love this. And in here we have stored a whole bunch of dreams. I don't think we're quite at 99 yet, but I hope we achieve someone's dream before I get to 99, because man, I don't want to have like 136 in here before I achieve one. But I'll read out some of the dreams just so you can think if you need time to think. We have Ashton said he would love people to sort of check themselves before they go get surgery or before they go get clinical medication to fix what's wrong with them. He'd like them to change their eating habits, their exercise routines, and stuff like that, because he said 9 times out of 10 most illnesses are preventable through exercise and healthy eating. So that's one of his dreams. Jack Nelson said he'd love to work for Sport New Zealand. I wrote in there I'd love to write a book. Our mate Barry, aka Bear King, I think still got the most heartfelt dream in here, and all he wants to do, he's 26 at the moment, is reach the age 30. So I was like, bro, that's deep. That's deep. And sometimes we take that for granted. So what's a dream of yours, brother? What do you have? It doesn't have to just be one. You can have up to 2 or 3.
I guess I have a few, but I guess if I think of, you know, one that probably sticks to me is, you know, the dream for me is to have an impact on our young people, you know, and being at the age I am where I can have that impact, you know, because, you know, before I know it, I'll be, you know, close to 30, and it won't be the same as if I, you know, talk to them now where I've just been through the journey, and so I can, you know, still relate to that, you know, stress and nerves and excitement of wanting to go to university, but also know what it feels like to be on the other side, you know. So trying to have that impact while I'm at that age that I can have an impact, I think is my biggest aspiration at the moment.
That's beautiful. So you would love to have an impact on rangatahi whilst you're still at a relatable level.
Yeah.
Before you become that, oh, hey, uncle, what are you up to?
Yeah.
Oh, bro, that's wicked, man. Well, how do you think you'll know when that's happened?
I think just trying to get into spaces that I can make it happen, you know, like I'm trying to take up more coaching roles and stuff like that this year and pursue new avenues that I can make it a possibility, and, you know, open those conversations in other areas, because, you know, like I can go into schools and that's meaningful and stuff like that, but just trying to make the conversations, I guess, more normal no matter where I go, because it's easy to do it in those spaces, but it's, you know, for some people, they don't want to talk about it at school. You know, some people open up when they're on the sports field or playing music or, you know, whatever they might be doing. So just trying to make it a more open conversation that, you know, you can have these conversations anywhere.
Bro, that's mean. So would you say, if it was to be measured, it would be the rangatahi that you are with at the moment, years down the line, are able to come up to you and say, oh, Tane, kia ora, bro, yeah, nah, I'm still doing this, or I'm doing this now and I'm loving it.
Yeah, I think that's what I've seen, you know, in previous years. Like I've had a few in 2022, I was a red shirt for the first time. And so I was only just going into my second year of study. And so I was one of the youngest to be a red shirt. But, you know, now I've had people who have just finished their first year of study. And the other day, actually, I just had one of the blue shirts reach out and be like, oh, because she was in year 12 at the time. So she's only just going to university now, but she reached out and said what she's doing. And, you know, that means a lot to me. And, there's some that will, talk to me all the time, and that's cool. But there's also the ones that, you don't really talk to, but then they open that conversation and then ask you things. And I think that's been the other meaningful thing, is they haven't just, told me, oh, this is what I'm going to study or this is what I'm doing, but they've also been, they've asked the question, oh, so how do I become a red shirt, or how do I become a subwarden? How do I become, get into that role that you're in? And that shows me that I've been doing something right. If there's people who want to be in those roles that I've been in, I must have done something right and had some impact on them, a lasting impact beyond the, just knowing that I was there. Yeah.
Bro, that's mean. That must be such a cool feeling. Not kind of like a inflate my ego feeling, but it's kind of, you can sit back and kind of say, wow, man, like I must have said or did something that really sparked an interest in them to come and do what I'm doing, so that they can be the ones in the future creating a spark for another student coming through.
And that's the thing, is like, it's such a, humbling experience to have it. It's never about, oh, that's awesome, like, oh, I can use it, or, be like, oh, there's people who want to be like me. It's more like, oh, it's awesome that you've just reached out, because it's shown me that all those, all those times that I reached out and stuff like that, they actually did have an impact. Because, it does get to a point, especially if you're trying to create, longer term relationships and connections, it can get to the point where you're like, oh, am I, it's back to that friendship thing. Am I being too annoying, always messaging and not really getting a response or stuff like that? But then you get, then I get these students who are saying these things, and it's like, okay, and that's something I guess that's probably a big learning too, is being, you don't have to have an impact on everyone. Sometimes we try and have an impact on everyone, but, there's always going to be people that gravitate towards you, and there'll always be people that don't gravitate towards you. But it's about, holding the same kind of relationship with everyone, not changing it because you're like, oh, I'm not going to get anything out of this, but just being real about it and seeing what comes of it. Yeah.
That's such a huge thing too, because you do see a lot of people change who they are, because you're like, they don't gravitate towards that person, so they instantly flip a switch, and all of a sudden, oh, I don't need to tell you this, or I don't know, figure it out yourself kind of thing. Whereas if you keep the same energy, student to student, person to person, eventually they'll come around and say, oh, he's not too bad. He's not my cup of tea, but he's not too bad of a bloke. And, if I ever need something, at least I know that I can reach out. And that's where you're, holding the door open, even though they might not be walking through right now. At least they know that you're there. You've got the door open for them, bro.
And yeah, as as I've said before, that's where it starts, is giving that opportunity. And, most students won't take it up. Most people won't take it up, but it's not about that. It's not about, oh, how many people can I successfully get to create those connections? It's more about just knowing that they have that option there, because, trying to be that bridge between, being a communicator for them to get to the places they need to be, whether it's, course advice so I can send them to a liaison officer, or whether it's, just advice about school and stuff like that, and I can try and point them in the right direction, or say, this is my opinion on it, but at the end of the day, the decision's yours. And giving them that reassurance, without the stress of a parent or, a teacher, a figure that holds some sort of responsibility, because yes, I have the responsibility, but I like to think of it as like a big brother, like I'll be there to support you. All the, things that are too much for me, I'll lead it where it needs to go. And all the small stuff, I can, try and give you some sense of what's real and what's not, So yeah, trying to hold that door open and be that bridge, be that connector in between. Yeah.
That's awesome, bro. Because we didn't have that stuff coming through, so they're so lucky to have that available to them, because not every university and not every student is going to be willing to do that for them in order to see the rangatahi come through and succeed in the space that you're currently succeeding in, bro. That's amazing. Love to see it. And now, here's a question I have for you, bro, as another host of another podcast, the Baskets of Knowledge, for the whānau out there listening. Go check it out. If you could recommend one episode from your podcast for our listeners here on this show? Doesn't have to be your favorite episode, doesn't have to be the most popular episode. It's just if you could recommend one episode from your podcast for the listeners of the 99 Dreams podcast to go and check out. What is it about? What is it? And why did you recommend it?
Oh, that's a hard question. And I think it makes it harder because most of the time we have guests, different guests on. So it makes it seem like I'm choosing someone. But I think probably I choose this one because he was such an inspiration to me. And I've talked about, different reasons why. But I don't know what episode number it is. I can find it later. But it's an episode with Lockie Scarsbrook. And so when I was a blue shirt and came down to hands-on as a student, he was a red shirt. And so he was one of the leaders and someone I looked up to. And then coming into the red shirt space, he was still someone I looked up to, but he's also so supportive and, welcoming to your ideas and, just evens the playing field. It doesn't matter the things he's doing. And, recently, not last year, but the year before, he got a scholarship to go over to Oxford and do his PhD over there, and I look at that as something that I would never think is achievable. But, I've had conversations with him when I've been working with him, and the year, just the month gone by when I helped with hands-on, he was talking about, celebrating my success in terms of the scholarship. And it just made me realize that, it doesn't matter what level you're on. And going back to the whole saying about, different people have different successes and success looks different to everyone, but we're all on that boat of success, and being able to celebrate each other, is what really gave me meaning. And, he came from a small background similar to us, coming from a smaller school, coming from a smaller background, not thinking you're going to achieve much. And here he is doing these amazing things. And, that's what the podcast aims to show, is that, we've had people who, come from those small backgrounds. We've had people who, like I said, have all their family that went to university and they're just the next person to do it, So I guess, it really draws back on what the podcast is all about, which is everyone has a story, and sometimes you don't think you have a story, especially when you're comparing yourself to everyone else. And something that's come up in the last few episodes is, this saying that comparison is the thief of joy, having this understanding that, comparison is good, but it also steals your joy from, you achieving and you actually celebrating that moment. Because if you're always trying to compare yourself to others, when you get those achievements, you go, oh, but I don't get it at the same level. But there's heaps of people that didn't ever get that achievement, that would love to be in your position. And that's something that I've held right through university, is when I'm struggling, when I'm, oh, I'm doing too much. Oh, I shouldn't be doing this. Oh, I shouldn't be here in the first place. As I look back on that year 13, my year 13 self, who, would have done anything just to go to university, so all this other stuff, yes, it's amazing. And, I'll continue to grow it, but it doesn't matter. I've been able to come, and that's more than, what most people will ever get to experience.
Bro, hard out. And all of that's so true, man. Is sometimes, we forget that all of our own accomplishments are the dreams of our younger self. We sometimes forget that. We get caught up in the moment, like you say, and we forget that I'm actually living out a dream. Like I'm at university, I've completed university, we've started podcasts, we're living dreams. And sometimes, we do too much and we're like, oh man, but Tane's podcast is 60 odd episodes out, mine's only got 20 odd episodes out. Keep comparing it, you're never going to be happy, because I'd have to release every bloody day to catch up to Tane and the baskets of knowledge over there. What would you say, my man, has been, other than learning about the comparison being the thief of joy, what are some other key takeaways been from your podcast that have really hit home?
Oh, I think something that hits home for me is, this whole idea about males speaking out and speaking up about the struggles that they're going through. That's something that's come through, and I think it's really resonated for me, because growing up, I was never really around that space. And then in intermediate, I had a friend who, was quite down and stuff like that, and he projected it all on me. And at the time, it was such a huge shock to be faced with these kinds of things. And because I'd never been in that space, I didn't know how to deal with it, and I didn't talk to anyone about it, and I understand now, why he portrayed those things on other people, because he was struggling with his own stuff. And for me, it would have been healthy to have those things. But, as I've gone through, I've realized that it's just so key to open up and just be open and honest about the things you're struggling with, because too often, especially as males, we hold on to it and think, oh, I'm not going to tell people. When I've said, my opinion on it is it doesn't matter who you need to talk to as long as you talk to someone. For me, it's a pride thing. And so when I don't feel like I can go to my close mates and my family, and that's not because I'm not close with them, but because I care so much about them that I don't want to put that extra burden on them. And so, for me, it's about talking to somebody who doesn't know me that well, but they know me enough that I feel comfortable to share these things. But for other people, they love to go to those people close to them and really have those deeper meaningfuls with those people in their life. So, it's been changing that narrative. I think the other thing is, showing that when you come to university, nobody really knows what they're doing. And that's been a message we're trying to push, or trying to get out of the whole podcast, is that your journey is going to change, and that's absolutely fine. When you're 18, when you're year 13, you think, oh, I need one story and that's going to be you for university. And, it's hard for me to relate sometimes, because I changed my narrative in year 13 from wanting to do physiotherapy to doing something more broad in exercise and sports science, but then I followed it right through. But, for most people, that's not the case, and that's absolutely fine. So I think there's been so many learnings, whether it's been, opening up conversations, whether it's just, making the decision for you as well, I think is an important one. Too often we're like, oh, I need to make my parents happy. I need to make my teachers proud, my whānau proud. This is about everyone else. But the reality is you've still got to have your own say and your own input into why you're doing it in the first place. And as I touched on, if you're happy, then everyone else is going to be happy. And if that's not immediate, then that's fine, because you're going to find people who are, proud of what you're achieving, regardless of where you go.
Hard out, bro. Men's mental health, or everyone's mental health, is so important. And I think I'm very much like you. I will go to some of my friends, but I'm kind of, I'll keep that for a stranger that I don't know. Because that burden sometimes is heavy, and you don't want to sort of unload all of that onto your friends and whānau, especially because we don't know what's going on in their lives. And I think hauora is much like success. Success is individual, and hauora is individual. We can help try and figure out what to do for other people, but essentially it's our own. And so if we're ready to open up and heal, then we've got to figure out, how can we do that? Who's available to do that? Who do I know, or who do I trust with that? And hey, I'm always here, whānau. If you're listening, DMs are always open. Never too late in the evening, in the mornings, never too early. I'd rather have you here than have to attend a service, or you at the bloody hospital. So whānau, if you are going through anything, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay not to be okay. And sometimes the hardest thing is just saying, I need help.
That's so true. And I think, it relates in some ways to, it was the same with my journey in the gym, is what I'm going to relate this to. But, there was always a quote up in the gym that said, the hardest part of coming to the gym is coming to the gym. Once you're at the gym, you'll do your workout because you're already there, but it's just stepping into those doors. And, sometimes you don't want to get up. Sometimes you don't want to talk to people about these things. But, it's just by changing this whole narrative of, instead of every time somebody asks, how are you, going, oh yeah, I'm good. Because that's just, it's not helping anyone, but just being like, oh, I'm all right. Oh, I'm actually pretty shit. It just opens that narrative. And, sure, some people won't be ready for that. They won't want to have that conversation right there and then, and that's absolutely fine. But at least you've then got it off your chest, and you've showing yourself that you can take that first step of showing that you're not all right. And then, even if that person can't help you, they'll be like, oh, who do you want to talk to? How do you think, you can get through this? And so it's just starting that process. And it is hard to come by. Like I still struggle with it myself, and it's something that I'm trying to be more aware of. And as I said, I think in our last episode, trying to, for me now, go into counseling, and for me that's always been a stigmatized thing of, oh, you only need to go if you really need help, like why would you go outside of it? But I think listening to Troy's podcast in particular, and then listening to a few other people, just realizing that it's going to be something that will benefit me in the long term. And yes, like going to my first session is going to be daunting and scary and all those feelings, and it's going to be weird to be talking about these things, but also learning that you can go, even if you are good, just go, and you never know what's going to come from those conversations. I could go in, spend 5 minutes and be like, no, everything's good, I'm feeling good, done, that's it. But other times going in when you didn't know things were bad, but it's before anything turns really bad, and just having those conversations of, oh, actually, this is something that's been bugging me, but I haven't really thought about it or touched on it because I've been so busy, or I've been just putting it to the side, So just, creating more opportunities, I think, is something that's so key for these, opening up. And it doesn't mean you have to tell everybody the world as soon as you start talking about it, but it's just a simple, at least an acknowledgement that, hey, I'm actually not doing all right, and I'm all right with that, is the first step towards anything.
Hard, even if it's just oh, what are you up to, bro? Nah, not too much, but I don't want to talk about it. But at least now everyone else knows that the cope-up is there, and if you want to dive into it a little more, then you can when you're ready. And hopefully, Fano, if you're one of the people that someone comes up to reach out to you, you're just there to listen. You don't have to have advice. You don't have to have solutions. Just as long as you're there to listen and understand what your friends or your whānau are going through, I think that's the most important thing, is just listen. You don't have to have 10,000 solutions. You don't got to solve his problems or her problems overnight. Just listen.
And I think that's probably an important idea you raise, right? Because I think that's often the scary part of going and talking to someone, is you're like, oh, I don't want to put that pressure on people to try and come up with solutions to my problems. But for me, when I talk to people about these things, it's not that I want the solutions, sure, I'll take advice, but all I want is somebody who will listen to what I'm worried about without any judgment, but also without, having that pressure of, oh, I need to know everything, but that you're just there and listening. So that's the biggest thing, is finding someone that does listen to you. And as I say, it's not always going to be the people you expect, like I've got plenty of, mates that I don't really talk to that much, but I can talk to about this stuff. And that's just where I feel comfortable, where, close friends that I've had my whole life, I just could never talk to them about that. And again, not because it's because of the connection, but because that's just, I choose to keep those separate, and that's absolutely fine.
Hard out, whānau. Just whatever works for you, just as long as you're taking care of yourself and you understand that when the time comes, please do reach out, because we'd love to have you here. The best analogy that I can give is if you are into stock markets or anything like that, and it looks like you're having a down year and all the stocks have crashed, but if you zoom out and take a big look at the wider picture, you're actually up versus last year. You might be down over the past couple of 2 months, but over the past 2-3 years, there's been growth. And so sometimes, whānau, when it feels like it's just been raining day after day, week after week, just remember that the sun will shine again. You just got to wait for that day to come and weather the storm. I know it does get hard, but trust me, it's a lot better when you're 6 feet above ground rather than 6 feet below. So, my brother, as we start wrapping up the show here, man, there's only really one more thing I'd love to ask, and I always ask my guests here, is if in 5 to 10 years you can come back and look on this episode and you're seeing Tane from the future, what's something you'd love to ask him that when you're watching this video you can answer?
I guess, and this is probably going to sound, I guess it's not cheesy, but it is. But I think is the biggest question I would ask is, are you happy? You know, because as much as we pursue, you know, all these achievements and all these accolades, and I've got to be there and I've got to be there. Something I've taken through my whole university, you know, is am I happy? Am I happy doing what I'm doing? Because if I'm not, none of it matters. You know, it doesn't matter, and you're always going to reflect on it as a negative. So my key thing as I go through things is, is it making me happy? And, you know, that doesn't mean that I have to change my whole lifestyle completely, but it means that as I go through, you know, time to time, I'll reflect on that and go, am I happy doing what I'm doing? What is, you know, is there things that I need to change? And what is it that I need to change? And being proactive about that as well, you know, because it's one thing to go, oh, am I happy? No. And then you carry on because it's just what it is. But actually being proactive and going, okay, what is it that's not making me happy? And that's a process that you come to learn, but it's something that you should reflect on because it's so easy to, you know, go down a rabbit hole, go through a couple of months doing all this stuff because that's just what you're used to. And then you go, oh, I'm not actually happy doing this. And one day you just break, you know, just like this whole conversation about mental health, you know, it's better to have these small reflections along the way and just be like, yep, today I'm doing all right. Today I'm feeling average. Okay, the next day I feel all right again. Then not think about it, not think about it, not think about it. Oh, I'm really bad. And now I don't know what to do.
Bro, hard out. And one thing I think, especially reflecting on Waitangi Day the other day, is that, you know, our parents and our tipuna, they sacrificed, they lived and worked their asses off so we have the opportunity to be happy. And I feel like the space that we're in now, we really do have an opportunity to be able to live a life where we can be happy. Whereas if we're doing things that we don't enjoy, just drop it, stop doing it, leave that job. If you're in a toxic relationship but you're not too sure whether you are or you're not, if you're unhappy, leave. It's not the end of the world. Your happiness matters the most. And like you say, bro, just keep working on being happy. It's not cheesy, it's not corny. It's a great reflection to have in 5 to 10 years. I hope you are still happy, brother, and you're out there killing it. I hope that scholarship has branched out to a few more regions, bro, because that's such an important kaupapa that you're a part of, man.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting times, and that's, you know, living for the moment as well is the other thing I'd probably want to reflect on. You know, like growing up, it was always, oh, what are my goals for this year? Where do I want to be in 5 to 10 years? But now it's about just enjoying the moment because there's so many moments you're going to miss if you're always looking at the end goal, and you're not going to realize all the amazing things you've done, you know, on the journey if you're always just tunnel vision on that end goal.
Hard. Sometimes gotta slow down and smell the roses. Bro, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really do appreciate it, Tane, and all my listeners. Whānau, go and check out his podcast. I'll tag everything down below. Send me that episode and I'll link that one in particular, as well as your podcast links, as well as your Instagram links. I'll link all of that down below, as well as Tane's personal pages. If you want to go and catch up with him, reach out. He's got amazing things to talk about. If you want to see what his study's up to at the end of the year, definitely keep an eye on him. If you can help contribute, Whānau, hit him up, because I know a few teachers, if you've been on the show, so hit him up, Whānau. Go check him out. Is there anything you want to say before you go? Tell the Whānau what you're up to, what you're involved with coming up.
No, well, other than honours, I'm taking up a few roles, and as I said, about like in the coaching space and stuff like that. But I guess probably if I was more to leave advice, or like for our podcast, we talk about something for people to put into their basket of knowledge. And I think for me, it's about taking all those opportunities and pushing yourself to take these opportunities, because if you never put yourself out there, the answer is always going to be no, you know, whether it's something small or something, you know, big that you never thought you would achieve. And, you know, now is the time to do it, because once you leave university, you're going to be in that 9-to-5 job. You're not going to have as many connections to draw upon, you know, whereas now I've been so fortunate that I've made those connections, not only with, lecturers and stuff like that, but also, my cohort that I know that I can reach out to in 5 to 10 years when they're all doing amazing things. And by doing that, you give yourself so many more options that you can then turn away, like allow yourself to be in the room and be in contention for these things. And then, as we said, if you have to say no, at least you put yourself out there instead of always thinking what if.
Hard. Me personally, I could never live my life thinking what if, because it's the worst feeling. Great advice. Thank you so much for leaving there with the whānau. Again, Tane, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. I truly appreciate it. And to all the whānau listening, thank you so much for sticking around. Ka kite Tane, ka kite whānau, mauri ora, catch you all next time.